Tansi Tawau, I'm TR Wheatley. This is APTN National News for January 10th. President-elect Donald Trump has his sights set on drilling in the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge, and it seems no one else is interested. On Wednesday, the U.S. Department of the Interior announced a federally mandated oil and gas lease sale within the refuge received 0 bidders. As Sarah Connors tells us, the sales flop is great news for those who want to see the refuge protected.
The Arctic National Wildlife Refuge in Northeast Alaska is home to over 19 million acres of pristine habitat for polar bears, musk oxen, and other wildlife. But a federally mandated lease sale earlier this week saw 400,000 acres of the refuge's untouched wilderness up for grabs for oil and gas development. No bidders came forward by Monday's deadline.
We're excited and we're happy and we're pleased. I think it's good for us right now. Decisions that have been made.
The Vuntag-Gwitchin First Nation in northern Yukon is breathing a sigh of relief. That's because the Arctic Refuge's coastal plain serves as vital calving grounds for the porcupine caribou herd. The Gwitchin in northern Canada and Alaska call the plain the sacred place where life begins.
Any development on the coastal plain will have devastating impact on the caribou and our inherent rights and human rights as Gwitchin people.
But during the last days of Trump's first presidency in 2021, he finalized a plan to open the refuge to oil and gas development. That sale generated only 1% of what was promised, and the few leases sold were later scrapped.
It shows that Arctic Refuge drilling's bad business.
This environmental group says the lack of interest speaks volumes.
It's not the way of the future, and smart companies are staying back.
But the sale's failure doesn't mean the refuge is safe just yet. The state of Alaska is suing the Department of Interior about the amount of land for sale, claiming it was too small and therefore unattractive to industry. If successful, the lawsuit could open the door for Trump to redo the sale. Motoro says Trump may also very well try to push new legislation to open the refuge to development once he takes office. But there's also a chance that could backfire.
That would be pretty wild since the first two were a complete disaster with no one showing up. I just think the handwriting is pretty much on the wall at this point. The Arctic Refuge is not a place that should be an oil field, and industry will stay away.
Wednesday's sale was the second of 2 mandated under Trump's 2017 Tax Act. The president-elect takes office on January 20th. Sarah Connors, APTN National News, Whitehorse.
A new report this week reveals that the Alberta Energy Regulator recorded 514 tailings spills at oil sites across the province from 2014 to 2023, which averages 1 spill a week. Kevin Timoni from Treeline Ecological Research received the data from a Freedom of Information request. In it, he found that the Alberta Energy Regulator underreported the size of spills, including 1 spill that was recorded as 44 million liters, but the spill was actually 100 times larger at 4.4 billion liters. He says he was told by the regulator that the error was due to the spreadsheet not being able to fit the size of the correct number. He says the 514 reported spills were vastly underreported and that the regulator did not inspect 96% of the spills.
The Alberta regulator, including the CEO, has maintained that they do routine inspections and that, there's nothing that really escapes their notice. Well, routine inspections does not really tell the story when they're only inspecting a fraction more than 3% of the spills.
4 people are facing charges in connection with an apparent human smuggling scheme in eastern Ontario. Ontario Provincial Police say a vehicle was stopped in Cornwall heading to the Canada-US border. Officers found 8 people hidden in the back of the vehicle. The driver and passenger were arrested, along with 2 more suspects in other vehicles. The 4 are from Akwesasne and Quebec. In Montreal, reports of homeless people sheltering in emergency rooms have been publicized over the last week, drawing attention to the lack of emergency services for the city's homeless population when temperatures plummet. Resilience Montreal has been seeing an increase in clientele, and some have been seeking refuge by sleeping in the hallways of their day shelter. Executive Director David Chapman says homelessness is increasing, specifically among the Indigenous population. But without more emergency resources, some are forced to use more creative ways to stay warm.
You would not believe how many homeless are quietly sleeping in airport waiting areas. Yes, emergency rooms, obviously metros, but others get sick of being disturbed, and so they get more creative. They go down under the ground in city infrastructure. They go into abandoned buildings. They go into further forested corners where they hide with like a tarp that's the right color for the season, like white for winter and brown for fall, green for summer, and just because they're sick of getting removed from their little space of safety.
A social media post made by an employee of the Interlake Eastern Regional Health Authority in Manitoba caused a community-wide uproar and eventually got the author fired. The post made on Monday questioned Premier Wabkanu's decision to search the Prairie Green landfill for missing and murdered Indigenous women. Regional Health Authority brass got wind of the post. According to a news update they issued Tuesday, quote, "Direction was given to remove the post and the employee is now no longer working with IERHA." It goes on to say, "Posts of this nature are deeply hurtful. We remain committed to reconciliation, anti-racism, and to mitigating further harms through swift, decisive action." We're always looking for your feedback or story ideas. Here's how you can continue the conversation. If you have a story you want to share, send us an email to news@aptn.ca. To read and watch our stories, go to aptnnews.ca. And you can find us online on your favorite social media sites, including TikTok, YouTube, LinkedIn, and X. Follow APTN News to join the conversation and see our latest stories. It's time to take a quick break. When we come back, we will tell you about a film set in Montreal and the wildfire in LA. Welcome back. The Prairie Theatre Exchange kicks off the second half of its current season with a Canadian historical drama film.
Madame Savoie told the girls that they were here to save you.
Save me? They don't even know me.
Sister are close.
Les Filets du Roi, or Daughters of the King, is based on a 2018 stage show. The film debuted in 2023. Set in Montreal in 1665, it explores the colonial history of our country through the eyes of a Mohawk girl and her brother as they cross paths with a newly arrived French woman from the Old World. It's showing January 16th at 7:30 p.m. Tickets are available on the theater's website. To explore the homeland of the Austronesian and uncover the Indigenous cultural treasures, the Fulu Cultural Foundation held an 8th-month exhibit titled Bula Bule at the NTU History Museum to allow more people to see and cherish this cultural gem. This from Taiwan Indigenous Television.
Powerful singing filled the NTU History Museum to kick off the Bula Bulai Indigenous exhibition. This exhibition was organized by the Fulu Culture Foundation, assembling 200 national treasures and valuable artifacts from 19 public and private museums, and 3 Indigenous members on display, creating a collection of the unique and historical significant classic artifacts. Indigenous community members were invited to participate in the opening on the 16th.
事实上，我也花了1年半的时间，到各个博物馆去请求他们有收藏这个很经典、很不错的，但是有些他们从来没有展览过。但是除了这之外，我就发觉好像还缺了什么。原来在部落里面有，所以部落里面的东西其实非常的精彩，尤其是云豹皮衣。
To interpret the exhibition's theme, cultural origins and pinnacles, headgears from the Lukai and Paiwan indigenous communities, and precious clouded leopard garments are prominently displayed, showcasing the magnificent cultures of the indigenous peoples, while also teaching community members how to preserve antiquities.
那我是希望说，透过这样的机会，希望有更多的人看见。对，那就刚刚我讲的，就好像说，他们好像就 有注入新的生命在里面，然后我就可以再感受到爸爸还在的那个感觉，而且他们对这个东西非常珍惜，相对的我也非常的就是把它视作宝物，好像是一个生命一样。
因为像云豹皮之类的，它很怕潮湿，可是山区它的雨量会比较多，所以它虫跟那个湿气很重。那也很感谢经由这次的展览，我们有学习到了很多保存的技术，不管是它的温湿度要保持在几度，都有经过这次的展览，我学到了很多。
The Bula Bulai exhibition opened on November 16th and will be on display until July 31st next year. The theme artifacts open my eyes, culture lights my heart, interprets the origins and peaks of cultures, inviting the public to explore the origins of indigenous peoples and the climax of their cultures.
As we transition from autumn to winter, the intertidal zone along Taiwan's east coast becomes a treasure trove of vibrant green seaweed known as linling. Taking advantage of the favorable weather and low tide, some people are seen gathering, adding a fresh and delicious ingredient to their meals. Here again is a report from the Taiwan Indigenous Television Network.
At the Garuruan intertidal zone, the receding tide reveals lush green algae blanketing the rocks. The Amis people are bending or squatting to pick the seaweed carefully. They use their fingers to pluck the seaweed gently, avoiding its roots to allow it to regenerate. This method also minimizes impurities, making the cleaning process easier. The seaweed that people gather, primarily green algae growing on coastal rocks, thrives during the seasonal shift from autumn to winter. Some intertidal areas along the east coast see an abundance of edible seaweed during this period, drawing locals together, adding a fresh and delicious ingredients to their meals. However, villagers have noted that climate conditions might have impacted growth patterns. In the Garuruan area, this lush greenery hadn't flourished for several years. The harvested shamai is not only used in soups, but also makes an excellent chilled side dish. When pickled with salt, soy sauce, chili, and garlic, it's incredibly delicious.
It's time for one more break. When we come back, an interesting conversation with an Ojibwe man from Peguis. Town 1. Nain -4, Happy Valley Goose Bay -2. Gaspé 2 degrees, Quebec City -6. Sault Ste. Marie -4, Peterborough -8. Kapuskasing -7, Thunder Bay -5. Churchill -29, Norway House -24. Gimli -16, Brandon -12. North Battleford -6, Yorkton -17. Uranium City -16, Larange -14. High Level -6, Peace River 3 degrees. Edmonton 3 degrees, Lethbridge 7. Bella Coola -1, Kamloops 5 degrees. Dease Lake 2 degrees, Smithers 0. Rock River -12, Dawson -5. Norman Wells -11, Fort Simpson also -11. Tuktoyaktuk -16, Fort McPherson -18. Cambridge Bay -25, Chesterfield -17. Arctic Bay -27, Igloolik -26 and sunny. Welcome back. Two-Spirit poet and novelist Joshua Whitehead, who is Ojibwe from Peguis First Nation in Manitoba, released his first book back in 2017 and hasn't slowed down since. His latest book, Indigiqueerness, came out in 2023. To speak more about that is author Joshua Whitehead, who joins us now. Thank you so much for joining us today. We first spoke to you back in 2022 after the release of your third book, Making Love to the Land. Can you tell us about your most recent work, Indigiqueerness, and how this is different from your previous work?
Yeah, Indigiqueerness came out of my writer residency with the University of Athabasca during the lockdown periods. And I kind of think of it as the Too Long Didn't Read, Making Love with the Land 2.0 edition, I suppose. But really kind of came out of just like a whole archive of my life as a writer there in Treaty 1, right? In Selkirk, Manitoba, which is where I kind of spend most of my life, in Winnipeg, also a bit of Peguis as well, which is my home nation. And really just thinking about storytelling practices, what it means to me, what it means to be, an Ojibwe writer from Treaty 1, and also what it means to be a Two-Spirit writer. So I had a lot of fun with it, and we got to include a lot of really interesting, important photos, such as, the lockdown measures that were taken in Peguis, as well as a lot of the flooding that happens there as well. So I was really happy to include the visuals alongside the written word with that edition of it.
Can you tell us what you're currently working on now?
So I'm working on two projects right now. I am just finishing up a Two-Spirit horror story for the next anthology of Never Whistle at Night, which is an Indigenous horror anthology. And it's my first foray into horror. I'm a big horror film fan, so I'm a horror buff. I love Halloween, so I was very excited to dip my hands into a new genre. And my next big project that is just of my own is a Two-Spirit apocalypse novel, which takes place between here in Treaty 7 Mohkinstsis, also known as Calgary, and southern Manitoba, Starmound, Manitoba, if folks have ever visited there. And comes from a lot of my research and, just I guess my studies and conversations I've had with community and in literature around star people. So it's kind of made me a little bit of a, Uncle Facebook conspiracy theorist, thinking so much about aliens or star people and other non-human entities like Bigfoot, little people. But it's been such fun so far, and I'm just finishing it. I know my editor and publisher, Knopf Canada, are eagerly awaiting. And thankfully, I have this year off from teaching, so I get to finish that for you folks.
That definitely sounds interesting. I mean, a lot of the Indigenous legends happen around those things. So where do you get your inspiration for your writings?
It's twofold, I guess. I would say my first three books, Full Metal Indigiqueer, Johnny Appleseed, and Making Love with the Land, are what I would kind of call biotextual writing, which really just means that, it's fiction, it's nonfiction, it's poetry, but it draws a lot from my experiences, my joys, my loves, my losses, my pains and traumas. Which worked wonderfully for those books, but it is exhausting to continually keep, excavating memory for the sake of crafting these books. So a lot of it came from personal experiences, familial experiences, community experiences for those three books. This one's a little bit of a different foray. It is purely fiction. There's a little bit of me in it, but I am not attached to it so integrally. And for this one, I'm drawing just a lot of inspiration from, as you say, the legends, the stories that we all share, which, we all come from different nations. I'm from Peguis, but I'm here in Treaty 7 on Blackfoot Confederacy. And they also share stories of, you lose the remote, you blame the little people, right? You're on the trap line, you see Bigfoot. Everyone has a star people or alien story. And so I've just been drawing a lot around, these stories that we share. And then some of our creation stories too. And for me, the big one with this forthcoming book comes from the Anishinaabe word Bagunagijig, which means the holes in the sky, and also the Cree word Bagonagisik, which also means the holes in the sky, which are creation stories of these giant cedar trees that would pierce kind of what we might call like the heavens or into the fourth world, where Sky Woman fell from, and ancestors crawling down them, these giant trees to kind of come to Earth. So I've been getting a lot of inspiration from our traditional stories with this one, and then infusing them with two-spirit lives here now in the contemporary sense, and what it would mean for maybe two-spirit characters who are messy, are struggling to make rent, the world has ended, and they have to take this long trek from southern Alberta to southern Manitoba, and what that would look like. Because I didn't often see that. So yeah, a lot of inspiration from myself, my community, the stories my family tells, in the garage when everyone's having their late night smoke. And then also just from traditional stories that I've just had the great honor and privilege to hear, to listen, and to read too.
Definitely hear stories when the aunties and uncles gather. What do you hope that Indigenous and non-Indigenous community will take from your work?
For me, it's really important that I make space for my two-spirit brethren and sisterin across Turtle Island, or North America as we call it. And so I really want them to be seen, to be heard, to be represented in healthy ways that are not always just like noble and stoic, but we are also messy people. We are chaotic, we are lively and fun and sexy. And so it's important for me to show that on the page as much as I try to exemplify that in my life. And so what I hope Indigenous folks and non-Indigenous folks take from that is, just making space for those we might call now contemporarily queer or trans or gender nonconforming, right? Or LGBTQ within our own communities, making space for them, and those who are not Indigenous and not of our communities, to know that, we have a long history on this island that predates a lot of things that we might consider gay or queer history now, right? Such as the Stonewall riots of '69. Very important for, queer life here on Turtle Island for settlers, but Two Spirits histories arc back so much further. So 1969 is yesterday in our history rather than this longevity. So wanting to show, that we've always been here, that we are still here, and even though we have been targeted since the docking of powers on this island since 1492, that we are still thriving and still succeeding and still helping to heal ourselves and the communities too.
Yeah, thank you for that. I look forward to it, and thank you for taking up space and making space.
Thank you so much for having me. I do have to say that I think my parents are single-handedly keeping Twilight going on APTN. They love to watch the Twilight series, so thank you, APTN, for having me and for all that you do. Miigwech.
And that's your daytime newscast for Friday, January 10th. We're back again for your evening news at 5 p.m. Central. Come back and join us then. From all of us at APTN National News, Egasani, thank you for watching, and we'll see you again. Hi.